Okay, so Mike, thanks very much for talking to me today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. That's all right.
I guess my first question is in relation to your connection to heart disease. What is your connection to it?
Okay. Well, I was diagnosed at around 16 or 17 as having hypertension. My mother had hypertension from an early age as well, and my father had a bypass later in life. He wasn't on medication, so hypertension and heart disease had been part of our family life, so I knew a bit about it. But I was diagnosed very early at 16 or 17, and I went on to medication straight away, which, being a young person, it was quite difficult being on medication at that point and to be carrying on with it as I went through my life.
It seems to be quite an issue for people to be on medication for the rest of their life. What is it about that is so hard?
Well, for me, I think once I got used to the idea and understood what it was about to start with, I got used to it, and one a day was okay. It was just, have your pill and off you go. And then later in life, as I stopped playing sport and those sorts of things and started putting on weight, I had to have more tablets. So I went to 2, and then all of a sudden, a couple of years later, my blood pressure kept on going up, and my doctor said, well, we're going to have to put you on sort of a cocktail of drugs now to try and match it. So then I was on 3 or 4, and then as the weight kept getting more, I had to go on Lipitor, and then I had pills for my joints, and it just got to the point where I was taking 6 or 7 pills a day, and you just think, well, where's this going to end? What are the side effects for me around all this? Surely this isn't good for me. And I guess you just start thinking, well, I feel a bit useless, I feel a bit out of control, I need to do something about this, but being able to do something about it is really tough. So you're sort of left feeling, I got quite depressed about the whole thing in the end, feeling out of control.
We obviously met pounding the circuit around One Tree Hill.
That's right.
And you've been doing that for some time now. Was there a trigger for you in terms of, obviously the fitness thing has been really important, that's obvious. Was there a trigger for you that started that journey?
Well, this particular journey, it's been going for a while now, the journey. I have tried to keep fit a big part of my life. I've always loved sport and being part of that, so I have always done a bit of running. But when we found out we were going to be grandparents, that was you start thinking about, and then we had a little boy, Tamati. You sort of start thinking about what sort of grandparent you want to be, and I wanted to be an active sort of grandparent who was able to kick a ball around with them and run around with them and be silly and do that sort of male stuff that you get into, and it's a lot of fun. And I didn't want to be a granddad who ran out of puff after a few minutes and had to sit down and that sort of thing. So my grandson was probably the trigger for this particular time of trying to lose weight. And then probably the second thing was that I was having a conversation with my mum about 18 months, 2 years ago. And I said to her, Mum, I've been doing all this running, I just can't lose any weight, expecting a bit of sympathy. And she said, well, son, it's very simple. Just don't put so much in your mouth. And only a mother can say that to you. And then she died 2 or 3 months after that, unexpectedly. And I guess as I've been going through this latest process, she's been on my shoulder, and it's been a bit of a mantra, she's been there, and I've remembered that, and we laughed about it at the time, and it's just been something that stuck with me. Another thing for me was heading along to my cardiologist and checking out my heart health, and him saying to me, Mike, if you just lost 10 kgs, you could drop some of that medication that you're worried about. And I thought, well, surely I can lose 10 kgs. And the good thing he did was he sent me off to a dietitian, where I learnt a little bit about my eating and what I was eating, and you dispel some of those sort of women's weekly myths that come in around what to eat, and the fad sort of diets, and you understand more about eating. that was a bit of a catalyst for me. And then finally, I think probably I'm a school teacher, a school principal, and we have a parents' night here at the school, and I was wandering around the hall looking at, some of the things that were on show. We had a thing there, and there was someone there umpiring a softball game, and I looked closely because I didn't really recognise this person, and I realised it was me, and I thought, God, look how fat you are, and you can dress yourself up in clothes that, and you can kid yourself into thinking that, no, I'm not so bad, I'm not so fat, it's, whatever. But I saw that photo and I thought, no, mate, you are fat and you need to, it's embarrassing and you need to do something about it. It's just not, that's not good enough. And so just getting that surprise and shock and embarrassment, I think was another trigger for me. And they sort of all seemed to happen within a few months of each other. And
The timing
it was very much a timing thing, very much a timing thing for me. I think the other thing about the cardiologist was you had to pay him $300 to tell him you were fat, I didn't like that. I knew I was fat already. I didn't need a cardiologist and spending all that money to tell me I was fat. So, yeah.
So all this talk about lifestyle change and all of that, are you a naturally disciplined person? How easy has it been, and what have you learnt about yourself throughout this whole process? Because we all relate very differently to behaviour change and having to make those changes. Some of us struggle with food and some of us struggle with physical activity. How easy has it been, and what have you learnt about yourself throughout that process?
Well, I ended up losing 30 kilograms. It took me 20 years of trying to get there. So many, many, many failures. And to the point where I thought I'd never, ever be able to do it. But a few things came together, some of them we've talked about already. But I feel quite lucky in some ways that all the planets seemed to line up for me around all the things that I'd learned. So what I'd learned from the cardiologist, what I'd learned from the dietitian. So I'd learned about food, and I'd learned about the fact that I'm a naturally competitive person. So I'd head out on my run for the first run of the year and I'd think, right, I'm going to do 5Ks tonight, I'm going to do 5Ks tomorrow night, and all those sorts of things. And I'd end up being injured, or I'd end up being just getting totally annoyed and angry with the whole thing because it wasn't working for me, become frustrated and say give up, or I'd get sick and give up. So I think I learned a lot along the way that when I started this time, I was quite conscious about the way that I was going to approach it, that I was going to make each time I went out for physical activity, I was going to try and make it enjoyable, and that I set myself small goals that I knew were going to extend me but were achievable. So I planned it and thought about it quite a lot before I started, and took all my learning that I'd had previous to now into account to just try and make this I didn't ever think I was going to succeed any more than I had before, but as I say, just things seemed to fit into place. So I lost a bit of weight in the first few weeks, and then I had 6 weeks, and it was in the middle of winter, and I didn't lose a thing. And I was running up that bloody hill, 4 nights a week. It's really steep, and but I knew from the past that if you just keep on going, and you are prepared, and you try and make it enjoyable, you're always looking for something that's enjoyable about what you do, then you get there, So that was a big part of it. I think having family support around just trying to keep your portions small. I struggle with it every day. I still do. My eating, it's my thing. Eating's what I struggle with. And so,
In what way do you struggle with it?
Well, I just find it very difficult to. With my portion sizes, I always look at it on my plate, well, that's never going to be enough. I've always want more. And I sit down after I've had my meal and I think, gee, that chocolate biscuit would be nice right now. Or, it's always at the front of my mind, and it's difficult to control sometimes. And I just have to take it day at a time, really, and have my good days and my bad days. That's something I've learned too, that you can have good days. And as long as your bad days aren't too bad, then you're going to be okay. You can have the odd blowout. So, and I've got a brother he's dynamite. So whenever we get together, I just have to say, right, well, it's going to be a bad couple of days with him, and then I'm just going to have to, go from here and spend the next couple of weeks just looking after myself.
Because it's hard enough making the change. I think it's even harder, perhaps, to sustain the change. What's been key for you in sustaining it? Because now you're running half marathons, and worked really hard to get to that point.
Yep.
How do you sustain the changes that you have made? Because it sounds like it's not just been around physical activity; it's been about nutrition as well.
Yeah, and I think for me, it's been around the fact that I've seen this as a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I have spoken to people who've lost 30 kilos twice in their lives, and I really don't know how they do that. I just can't see why you'd want to do that. So I'm determined that I've had this opportunity to lose this weight. Things have clicked for me. I'm now off all medication, and that's, to me, is just gold. And I don't want to lose through, just letting it go now. So I just set myself little goals each week still around my exercise, around my eating, and once again, just keeping it nice and simple, no grandiose ideas or too challenging, just keeping it nice and simple. And I have put a couple of kilos back on, well, 3.5 kilos to be exact, but it's...
Funny how you know that.
Yeah, exactly right. 3.7 if I'm honest, but it's not, to me, it's not too big a worry because I know that I can, I'm comfortable with that. I feel okay with that, and I'm determined not to let it blow out.
30 kgs is a lot of weight.
It was an awful lot of weight, and as I say, it felt like, to be honest, it felt like I'd won lotto. It was that sort of, I was incredulous that I'd managed to do it. It was, once I got...
Did you have a target for that?
I had a target to get to double figures to start with. I started at 113 kilos. And when I got to 99, I thought, whoa, I've made it. But then by that point, my body, and I was in such a groove that the weight just continued just to fall off me. I was losing 1 kilo to 1.5 kilos a week. And I know people lose a lot more than that, but remember, I was on I wasn't trying to go over the top. And so this weight just kept on falling off me, and to the point where I got to 83 kilos and I really didn't have anything more to lose. So it was just hugely gratifying, and you feel quite grateful. Well, that's how I felt, that I'd managed it.
It's a huge achievement.
Thank you.
What piece of advice, let's say there's somebody who's looking to make a behaviour change, not sure whether they can handle it, maybe similar to your situation, tried before, failed. What piece of advice, if you had one piece of advice to give somebody about behaviour change and making some of those lifestyle changes, lessons that you've learned, what would it be?
Well, I think the trick for me has been being realistic about the goals you set yourself, and being prepared to take your time around it, and that the steps you make are going to be small ones. It took me 30 years to put the amount of weight I had on, so it's not going to take me 6 months, 3 months to lose it all. It's going to take me a long time to lose that sort of weight. So that's you need to be realistic around that, and think about the fact that it is going to take a couple of years, probably at least, to lose that sort of thing and to get yourself back on track, and to learn from your mistakes of the past. I'm sure everyone's tried to lose weight before, and you need to think about why didn't it work last time, and just try and learn from those mistakes you've made, because there is a way around it. It's just you need to think it through and plan a bit.
Well, congratulations on achieving those goals.
Thank you.
It's I know how much work, I've seen you running around the park. I know how much work you put into your physical activity.
Yeah, thanks.
Never mind the nutrition, and so congratulations, and thanks for talking to me.
Thanks, Jen. It's been a pleasure. Thanks very much.